Hello there again. Thank you for being here and joining this class. We will talk about chapter 9 of the book, which is about structuring of organizations. You can see also on Google that there's lots to find there. You can see some really nice, useful films, for instance, about this, about Mintzberg, amongst others. So we covered some subjects already, and this is now the third chapter that we will look into a little bit deeper. Before we looked at collaboration, things you can ask yourself looking at your own company, for instance, what are the prime partners of your organization that you are now doing your assignment with? What forms of collaboration do you see? What forms of collaboration could be helpful in the future? Try to relate above to your theory from chapter 4. See how new potential developments could have impact on the innovativeness of your organization. Just some questions for you to address this topic to your assignment. The next subject was last week's subject, management and control. Things you can ask yourself here is, what are your company's core objectives? What methods are used to run the organization and steer it in the right direction? Think of the racing car. So how does the car respond to what the directors want? What is the direction? What kind of controls are there to make the organization controllable? What kind of people and functions are there? Is there a one tire or a second two tire system, etc.? So again, relate this to the theory from chapter 8. Also ask yourself, how can you relate the same to your company? Maybe there is a part of the problem has to do with management and the ability or an inability of the management to effectively control the organization. So look at this chapter also from your assignment perspective and see how you could potentially find causes or solutions in your assignment. The way that I would take the effort of making some digital class, and you would take the effort of watching the class and ask some questions and answer some questions. So I hope that we can keep ourselves to this promise. Okay, now we are going to talk about organizational structure, chapter 9 again. There is formal structure. Normally, when we talk structure, we talk about the formal structure. You can see that there in front of this picture, a nice org graph. But you can imagine that behind this picture there's the reality and the informal structures, which are a different world often. For instance, the classic example is that the relationship between the director and his secretary sometimes is quite different than the formal relation that you can see in the chart. Structure is about relations between elements. That's the basic meaning of structure. Structure is about what kind of relations are there between elements, how are they designed, or how are they functioned, how are they organized. So a useful metaphor here is perhaps to look at biology, where you can also have cells and organs, and together they have a relationship in such a way that you can see some kind of structure there. For instance, the structure of the bones of a human body, or the structure of the blood circulation and system of a human body, or the forms of how the cells of a plant are organized and form several parts of the plant, the stem and the leaves, etc. Also, when you look at an organization, you can recognize structure. You can see that there are specific types of relations between the various elements of the organization. And you can also imagine that you need this in order to be effective as an organization. And you can also understand that various forms of relations make out different types of organizations. We will talk about it more in class. So we will investigate how you can structure this for yourself and how you can learn what kind of structures you can have and what kind of structures would be fitting more or less in specific business situations. And that will allow you to become an effective manager when you understand that several forms and types of structuring have all their pros and cons. When we look at structure in organizations, mostly we think about the position structure. So the structure of the managers and their departments that make part of the organization. So an organization always has a number of departments, mostly headed by a manager, and this is the basic structure that we look for. You can also look at the structure of the processes. Some organizations, more modern organizations, are structured not so much by managers, but by processes. So what processes are there? These are the elements, various processes in this case. And the question is, how are all these processes linked together? What are the relationships between the processes and how is that working as a whole? Okay, we go to chapter 9. If you study the first paragraphs of this chapter, you will see stuff like task design, job design. What jobs do people do? Who has to do what? That's already some kind of structuring, in fact. And when you look at tasks, you can try to make life a little bit nicer or more effective or more efficient. And you can think of task redesign and look at things like job enrichment, making a job richer, better, to make a job larger, that you do more tasks, or that you rotate, so that you sometimes take over the job of a colleague and vice versa, job rotation. These are things that make your organization a little bit more agile, a little bit more flexible, and that keep your people more happy and help them to develop themselves stronger and also understand their work better. You will also find in chapter 1, 2, 3, I think you have looked at this before, but again, it's good to read it again, I would say, and learn about, okay, you can see various kinds of horizontal task divisions. You have the functional division, where you say, okay, this is a different function than the other function. Selling is something different than buying, for instance. So you have a buying department, or you have a sales department, or you have a production department, they do something else again. Or within production, some people are doing the sewing, for instance, you have a sewing department, and other people are doing the tinkering department. So you can make divisions based on what kind of functions these organizational parts do. So that's an F orientation, a functional division. You can also see that sometimes companies are structured by a means of a product division. So you can say that one product is a different product than the other product. So for instance, BMW makes motorbikes, but they also make cars, as you know. It's a different kind of product. And when this product is, the differences between these two types of products are important enough for an organization, then the organization, such as BMW, can decide to make one organization that only make motorbikes and another part of the organization that only make cars. The example of Philips at the end of this class will also be about this. There are good reasons to make divisions like this. And there are also good reasons not to do so, because if you have two different departments and one is making motorcycles and the other one is making cars, they both need administrative functions, for instance. So and they both will need a director, and both directors have to be paid. So cost-wise, choosing divisions like a P division or a market division or a geographical division, well, they come with a cost, because you have to build more organizations and which are doing the same work partly. Okay, so look at chapter 1 and 9.1 to 9.3 and learn about these kind of things. If you have any questions from the book, please ask them to your colleague students or ask them to me. The first question always is why? Why would a company want to divide, for instance, geographically? Why do I want to have a different sales department servicing Germany than a sales department that services the Netherlands? It will cost me more money to make a new department, so I must have good reasons to do so and to make a division in my sales, for instance. And the reasons in this case can be that the people in Germany, they tend to speak German, and the people in the Netherlands tend to speak Dutch, and those are two different kind of languages. So that's in itself already a good reason to think about making two departments. Other subjects you will find in chapter 1 to 3 are span of control. So how many people are there below a manager? The depth of control, how steep is the organization, how many layers of management are there, mechanistic and organistic orientation of an organization. Mechanistic looks like the copy machine. It's a very structured, very clear, machine-like way of organizing, and the organic way of organizing is a very loose, very organic way of organizing. And these are two extremes, you can say. So one company, like if you think of the classic Ford company, they made the T Ford years and years ago, 100 years ago, more than that. That suited a mechanistic, that also typified a mechanistic organization very much. And it's very nice in terms of efficiency, for instance. It needs a very stable environment to be able to survive. And on the right, the organistic way of managing and structuring an organization is more suitable when you deal with a very dynamic environment where everything changes very fast. And you can also understand that nowadays companies tend to become more organic in their structures because the world is more dynamic than the world was in the first years of the first industrial revolution. The question always is, what do we need? Here and there we need to become a little bit more mechanistic maybe, and here and there we need to try to become a little bit more organic in the way we organize ourselves. First, you can see, if you look at the model, you can see some elements, some organizational parts, as he calls it, and that always are there when you look in an organization of a certain size. Above you can see the strategic apex. It means someone is in charge, someone is in command, if you look at the last lesson. Below you have the core production staff, the people who do the actual work, making the products or giving the services to the customer. And mostly in between there's an intermediate level or middle level of managers that make sure that the tasks and the goals that are defined by the top management are transferred and translated into action below. On the right you can see the supporting staff, and on the left you can see the technical staff. The technical staff makes sure that processes are re-engineered and are developed and procedures are made. Technology is incorporated, and on the right you can see all kinds of supporting staff with some kind of specialization. For instance, in the field of communication or legal departments or other kinds of supportive activity. Around the model you can see the green shade of culture, which is always present in the whole organization if you want to see it at least. In class we will talk a little bit more about the various types of configurations that Mintzberg sketched for us, and we will try to make some real-life examples, to connect some real-life examples to these various types of configurations. So we will start in class by going a little bit more in depth in these configurations as Mintzberg has made them.